Welcome to Opera San Jose Talks, and today we're talking about Moby-Dick, which we're about to open in just a couple of weeks, and we're very excited about that. It's been a thrilling process to rehearse this opera. Just to hear the men's chorus is a thrill. And today I have with me Richard Cox, who is singing Ahab, and Justin Ryan, who is singing Starbuck. And you guys have been in about 2.5 weeks of staging rehearsals.
Yes.
Feels like more.
I feel like I just got here.
Yeah.
So it's amazing, how much we've accomplished in that little amount of time.
Well, Kristine having to leave early, stage director, I should say to everybody, Kristine McIntyre. When we did this deal, she really wanted to do it here, and of course I really wanted her here because I saw the Utah premiere of this production and I thought it was brilliant and loved it a lot. I mean, there were a few little things that I would like to have changed, and guess what? She wanted to change them too. So it was just all matched up beautifully, and she has such a reputation in our business. She's so highly regarded, and I see why. Now that I've watched her work from day to day, and I see her working with everybody, she knows what she's doing. This is a professional woman.
She's absolutely incredible.
And
I mean, not just to speak of her work as a director, which is phenomenal. I say that there are 2 directors in the world, and I've told her this, that I don't say no to, and she's one of them. Because she is so prepared, and every single thing that she asks, every single thing that she stages, it has a reason, and it is the overall arc of the character, of each individual character, and it's so important. But on top of just how amazing she is as a director, she is, I feel, one of the most, if not the most intelligent person I've ever met in my lifetime.
Truly, I was sitting here the whole time you were saying that, and she's so damn smart.
Yes.
Yeah, the depth
brain is just working.
The depth of her understanding and the knowledge of the material is really unparalleled.
I hate to be far from her in the rehearsal room because I feel like I'm missing out on learning something else. It's incredible. It's really incredible.
I think that intelligence is one of those things that you can tell right away by how deeply someone has researched and learned their material.
Indeed.
Unintelligent people don't know that they need to do that. Intelligent people know that they absolutely must insert themselves into the work. And I think conductors and stage directors, folks don't understand how long it takes to memorize an opera score when you're the conductor. It's one thing to memorize your role. It's another thing to make sure you know what everybody is saying to you, even though it's in Czechoslovakian. But to be able to inhabit... this came to me as I was driving in this morning thinking I was going to talk to you guys after I took the ice pack off my eye, which was swollen shut. You must enter the very beating heart of another person.
Yes.
And then convince the world that you are that person. And that the things that are happening are not made up. They're happening to you. That is your job.
It's a terrific responsibility.
And everybody calls you singers. And that's not true. You are actors.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, exactly.
Thank you.
And if you're not actors, you're in the wrong field. Go be a concert singer.
Yes.
Go sing Das Lied von der Erde.
Well, I love doing that.
Yeah, of course.
Oh my God.
I adore that piece.
But I saw that you've done it not once, but over and over.
Yeah, I guess I've done it 6 or 7 times now.
Man.
I've done every version of it now, so it's no, that's not true. I've not actually performed the Schoenberg Reduction. I've done a reduction by Cortese. That is 20 pieces instead of 13, which is brilliant, actually. And more people should know about that version.
I'm so glad you said that because I didn't know about that version.
It was premiered at his festival, I believe it was 2004. And it takes... the Schoenberg Reduction has a lot of the parts in the piano, and I believe it's 13 pieces. Everyone look it up. Make sure I'm not
that seems
saying so.
A slight number.
Yes, but then what he did was he expanded it to 20, and there's no parts in the piano version. And it's really, I did it in Montreal a couple of years ago, and I just adored that version of it. So it was really wonderful.
That's one of my favorite. When I was a kid in college, I came from the country, orange groves and cattle and horses and big dogs. And I knew nothing about music at all. I was never planning to go to school to study music. It was a complete freak of nature that I ended up with a piano scholarship at a university. And so I had everything to discover in front of me. I'd heard Van Cliburn play the B-flat, the bom-bom, right? His big winning thing when I was a kid. That's it. Yeah. And finding Das Lied von der Erde was a big moment in my life. All the songs of Mahler. And Kindertotenlieder remained one of the things that I just listened to over and over and over.
Of course.
And no, that stuff is genius. And
yeah, it really is. And it's very special. And when I did it the first time, I opened my score up, and I had bought the score when I was a student at Juilliard 10 years beforehand, and because I always write in my score the date I buy it and where I bought it. And I then studied it with the great American tenor Thomas Moser in Berlin, and we worked on it quite a long time before. And I even worked on the poetry because, my gosh, is it dense in my songs. And I was like, what's this about? And I worked on it for about 6 months before I even really got into it, because of course it's Chinese, and then it was translated into French and then into German, and then Mahler took the translation from German and then changed it. And in his original version, that's for piano that he created, there are different notes, there are different words, there's a different melody for the tenor quite a few times, and it's a lot of fun to do it that way. But you really have to have a virtuosic pianist to be able to handle it. The reduction is just really tough. Mr. Moser performed it and recorded it with Brigitte Fassbender, and it's I believe the pianist is Katsaris on that recording. But it's really interesting to hear it that way. Have you ever done the baritone part in it?
No.
Okay,
no.
Or the mezzo part, but I've never done it with a baritone. I would really love to, especially with the poetry of the final piece.
You have my email address.
That's right.
Okay.
Let's do it. Let's do it. After this, though.
Let's plan that one out a little bit. Sure.
Although the Das Lied von der Erde for me would pair nicely with this. It's the same range, same sort of requirements.
That same bite.
Absolutely.
Man, Ahab, both of you, you're such opposites. I think Melville was over the moon.
Yeah.
The deeper I grow into his work, that the guy was
incredibly ahead of his time, at least, at the very least. Let's just start with that, right? The depth of his understanding, his engagement in this novel, the battle between the humanistic and the Christian and
oh man, he just
maniacal.
takes the Christians to town, doesn't he?
He really does.
Yeah, it's really to me it's one of the more interesting aspects of working on Starbuck.
Christian charity is merely courtesy. Empty courtesy.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see that and how it manifests itself in the character of Ahab. That he just and he continues going forward, and we can talk about who is the whale to Ahab. Is the whale God? I mean, he calls it evil.
I would strike the sun if it offended.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So it's a really fascinating character, and he's so dense that you need, or I needed, Kristine McIntyre to
unpack him
and take me through this slowly and patiently, and finding who Ahab is with me, which she has been just immensely patient and helpful in doing.
And I can see that it would be a leap for you. I think you're a natural Starbuck. I just changed people that I
No, it's fine.
It's Justin over here on the side of the table.
I know, that's right. They can't see it.
That's right.
They can't see me point. So, but really, I think you're an absolutely natural Starbuck. I was trying to explain to someone just yesterday who Starbuck is, because people want to know. I said, well, you have to have a guy on stage who is quite acceptable as a family man.
Yes.
His life is his family, and he's facing the idea that he may never see them again.
That's right.
And the deep destruction that's causing in him, the terrible fear, the willingness to commit murder, that
or at least consider it.
Yeah. I don't know that I wouldn't have shot the guy.
Yeah, I don't know that I won't. And when I'm in the scene, I really don't. And it's a paradox for Starbuck, a Christian man, a Quaker man.
Yeah, which is a deep form of Christianity.
That's right, and it's a form of Christianity where one carries God within himself. And so he is the ideal type of Christian to place into this microcosm of humanity that's floating in the middle of the ocean, to represent, I think, what is good about the Christian philosophy, right? So Melville was very critical of Christian
of empty
orthodoxy.
Christianity.
Yes, and the Presbyterian Church and
Protestants, but not the real
Protestants.
deal.
Yeah,
he exalts the real deal through Starbuck, and also through Greenhorn ultimately.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that he does spend a lot of the early part of the novel, Melville does, with certain critiques, because he's developing a relationship with Queequeg, who a person that the people, the Christians that with the air quotes that he has dealt with would not accept.
And there he proves himself their superior.
Exactly.
In every way.
So there are several references in the early in the novel, but then so he's almost disavowing the institution of Christianity, but once on the ship, where one is sort of the real democracy in that way of being free from institutions.
A meritocracy.
Meritocracy
not
is
a democracy.
better. Yeah, not a democracy, at least,
It's not a democracy.
Well, Melville said that for Ahab, for those above him, he would promote democracy, but for those below him, he would certainly not, But with Starbuck representing the Christian philosophy, and sort of a counterpoint to what happens on the Pequod, which is humans will organize themselves, absent the institution. Here's a friend in Queequeg who's free of this institutionalized, BS that we sort of all have to live with. Wouldn't it be nice to live free of that? But then when you're on the ocean, what do we organize around? We organize around a different something that, be careful what you wish for.
Well, right? And a small handful of people in a small place.
Yes. Yeah.
And they're together 24 hours every day.
Yeah.
And for months and months and months. That's what people don't get.
Yeah.
How long these voyages are.
Yeah. The years even,
Yeah.
It's like a...
months of a stretch, probably with a port visit, every several months to unload your...
To take on supplies and fresh water in Lala.
Yeah.
God, I can't imagine living like that.
No thanks.
That's just way past. We're so spoiled.
We really are.
It's hard to even relate, isn't it? When you're looking at those scenes under deck, when the sleeping scenes, just to imagine when we start the story, of course, we're in the North Atlantic, or not the North Atlantic, we're leaving
Nantucket.
From Nantucket, but we're in the northern waters of the Atlantic.
That's the North Atlantic.
Yeah. So we're in cold climate. We're leaving on Christmas Day, right? So
exactly.
Yeah, but but a few months later,
in Massachusetts, Christmas is cold.
Yeah, but tooling around the equator, in 100-degree weather with no air below, just the smell alone, of 30 or 40 men in a very cramped space. It's hard to imagine. It really is.
No, for we who bathe twice a day.
Yes. Yeah, it's a little...
yes.
In the days of antibacterial lives.
Yes, and slowly killing ourselves because we have no immune system anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Gosh.
So...
That's true.
So I'm jumping into this giant work. First of all, let me ask you some personal questions.
Sure.
Okay.
Folks want to know, right?
Of course.
So, what's your life like? Where do you live? What goes on?
Justin
you have a
Ryan
dog?
here. Yeah, no, I have a cat. I live in Manhattan, so cat is probably a better option.
choice.
Yeah, and my wife, Laura Stevens Ryan, who is a soprano, and we've been married for. You better get this one right? 7 years.
Yes, you should. You keep track of that one.
And we have a lovely life in Manhattan, and we enjoy it there. I have family in Southern California, so I come to California quite a bit. I've been able, luckily, to work in Southern California, down in Long Beach, and so I spend some time for family, some time for business. If we could live in California, wouldn't we all want to? Maybe not, but I would. I'll speak for myself. I would definitely want to live here.
You're looking outside at the heart of winter.
Yeah, exactly. And meanwhile, it's 4 degrees in New York. My wife,
those listening on the East Coast are not going to be very happy with us right now. We have such a beautiful day here in San Jose.
I think it was Truman Capote who said, for every year you live in California, you lose 2 points from your IQ. Because it's just so easy to keep going.
Oh,
you don't have to stop and think.
Yeah. Oh, how funny.
Yeah.
So,
funny.
All right. So how about you, Richard?
Well, the thing is, I'm a Southern boy. You can hear from the accent. And I split my time pretty much these days between where I'm from, Chattanooga, Tennessee, where my family, all of my family still live there. I'm the lone person who doesn't live in the area. And then also in New York. And then also Berlin. So those are the 3 places I'm normally. Now, this last year I was in Berlin more often than any place else. So,
do you have a dog?
No, but I really want 3 dogs. Actually,
me too.
Yes,
I even know their names and breeds.
There is a wonderful a Swedish soprano named Helena Durza who had a wonderful career, and then started singing character roles. And I met her when I was a fest singer in Frankfurt, and we were doing Arabella, and she lived in just above Frankfurt, and she had me up several times, and she had 3 labs. She had a black one, a blonde one, and a brown one. And the brown one was Ramos, and I've never had much contact with a brown lab, and I just fell in love with him. And I said, if ever I take a university position where I'm not traveling so much, 3 dogs, 3 labs, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I love labs, and I'm a big dog person, so that doesn't. The big dog thing doesn't really go with traveling on a plane very often. So
yeah, it's tough.
When I left home at 18 to go to college, I said goodbye to my pet, right?
Yes.
And my horse, and I've never had a pet since because I've always lived in apartments.
Yes,
right?
Of course.
And I live in a condo now, but it's no different. There's no yard. So,
and with your job, you have these hours that sometimes you're like, oh, great, I can go home in the middle of the day. And then other times it's like, okay, I got here at 9:00 and I'm still here at midnight.
That's the nature of the beast.
Exactly.
But I'm going to retire. I'm talking with the board about when I should retire because I'm nearing 70 now. And so I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking about building a little house in Florida on a couple of acres in the same little town I went to undergrad in Little DeLand, Florida.
Oh, wonderful!
And I've long ago picked out the 3 dogs.
Oh yeah, what are your 3?
What are the breeds in the?
Well, Lily Bart is going to be an Irish setter.
Oh, lovely.
And Alan Gray is going to be a standard greyhound. And Tom Hamilton I can't think of the name of the breed right now. Just won't come to my mind. Anyway, they're gorgeous. They're woolly and they're black and tan.
Oh, beautiful.
About that big.
Oh, that sounds lovely.
And I was walking with my neighbor about a year ago, and I was chatting. I've picked out my dogs and their names. And she said, yeah, well, who are they? And she said, Larry, are you aware that they're all 3 suicides? I went, oh my goodness, they are.
Oh, I didn't think of that.
They are.
Okay.
But I said, I don't care. I liked them the best of all the people, so I'm still going to name them after those people.
There you go. Oh, that's great.
But having 2 acres of land and a little old Florida cracker house.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And with with dog trots and verandas all around.
That sounds perfect.
That is
Doesn't
great.
It
just sounds
does.
like paradise.
That's what I always said. I was like, I really want dogs so bad. But
Yeah.
And they don't get to be inside, but they get to be on the dog trots and they get to be on the veranda.
yeah, they get to live.
They're right there.
Yeah.
They'll be right there. I just
right.
not going to have them in my room.
Oh, okay. I'll have them all over the place. I'm just that person. So
Also, having grown up in the South with animals, the animals were never permitted in the house.
yes, in my house either.
Yeah.
Our dogs and cats were always outdoor animals. So.
Where they belong. Oh, okay.
Oh, yes. My parents would agree with you.
Well, so now we're going to chat a little bit about your characters and your relationships to other people in the story. Something that has struck me in the course of watching rehearsals. You guys don't know, I really do come to a lot of rehearsal.
We see you back
Sometimes
there.
I see
I don't want to bollocks up everything and make people nervous, because when the general director walks in the room, I've been told, when the general director walks in the room, everybody gets nervous, you should stay out. And I said, I work here.
Well, yeah, and you don't. And
I can't stay out.
You don't do it in a way that's
I never
That's
interfere.
right.
stuffy and that sort of thing. It's
No.
I mean, you're seeing what product you're producing.
That's exactly what I'm doing. That's exactly
exactly. It's a responsibility.
And you never know.
Exactly.
Some stage directors, you come in and you think, I need to help this out, right? And other stage directors come in and you think, I don't need to drop in here at all. And sometimes the room gets toxic. And I have to know that because I'm the only one who can change it.
I was going to say that's a humongous responsibility as a general director, isn't it? To have to actually intervene and to intervene in the artistic process, because every person has a different way of working. And so I can't imagine what that must be like, and having to really decide how and when to step in, or just to let things, how far to let things go.
Until there's no time left.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the trick.
Yeah.
You can't wait too long.
Yes, of
because
course.
then there's no time left.
Right.
Yeah.
And people go on stage who shouldn't be on stage.
Okay.
And conductors are still conducting who probably shouldn't be conducting this work anyway. And you need to know that early on. You have to know that.
Yeah.
So you're right, and it is delicate, and you don't want to cause world war. You just need to get a course correction.
And I can only imagine the tremendous sensitivity that you have to have towards just every personality type in this business, which is a lot.
Right.
To be able to decide all of these things.
You have to temper some of that with the fact that it is a business.
Yes.
And sensitivity only goes so far. Sometimes you just have to call somebody in your office and shut the door. I haven't had to do it very often, but I have had to do it. And sometimes you have to relieve somebody of their role. I haven't had to do it very often, but I have had to do it.
Yeah.
I've only been in this position for 5 years. And I hope not to have to do many more of those before I'm not doing this anymore. But you're right, it is a difficulty. But the thing that has struck me in watching these rehearsals is that, okay, this is the apex of American Romantic literature. And one of the hallmarks of Romance literature is that the characters are truly individuals, and they have a sense of alienation from their surroundings. Now, you get it right off the bat with Greenhorn, who the world knows as Ishmael. I grew up with Ishmael, but he's Ishmael
I did
in this
too.
show.
Yeah.
Those of us in the South,
Yes,
with
we
some
did.
Baptist tradition
That's
behind
right.
us.
That's right.
We know about Ishmael. But you get it with Greenhorn right off the bat, because he says so right off the bat, because he's telling the story. He's the narrator. And I love in this opera how he doesn't become Ishmael until he's been through it all and lost everybody.
It's wonderful, yeah. And it really is, it's the novel. Call Me Ishmael is the result of the following 40 hours that you're going to commit to.
It was really brilliantly conceived, I feel like, by Gene and
exactly.
Jake. Honestly,
the first time when he was being in the first production, when Ishmael is being lifted out of the water onto the Rachel, and he says, "Call me Ishmael."
Yeah,
I was seated with Corey, our artistic planning director.
Yeah,
and she burst into sobs. At those words, she burst into sobs, because there you see he's gone through all of this to become the truly isolated man with no connection to the world.
It was really an incredible moment. I saw I was working on Lohengrin in San Francisco, and I went to the final dress there when they did it there, and so that was the first time I saw the piece or even heard the piece. So it had a real those moments had real profound, like it just grabs you. And the Queequeg Greenhorn relationship is so beautifully written in an interesting, like, just what we need more of in the world sort of way.
Well, and it was Kristine who said, ultimately, this story is about friendship between these two men who were able to find real friendship. The thing that, by the way, I think the terrible thing that's missing in contemporary society are those deep, personal, affectionate friendships that one could have in the 19th century, but one can't have since Freud. Because everything has been sexualized.
Right.
So my closest friendships in my life have been with other guys. And we were devoted to each other, and these were absolutely non-sexual friendships, the real thing. And everybody presumed that they were sexual. Just everybody just presumed it, because we were so close. And I believe that a lot of men would have easier, better friendships with their male friends if they weren't frightened of being colored the wrong color.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real loss. And this opera is, the novel was written in a time when you could have and did have these deep friendships, and people did spend their time together. And here this kid who has been divided from the world, who feels isolated from everybody, who, when he has this November in his heart and wants to step into the street and knock people's hats off, that he has managed to build a bridge with a cannibal, and is so startled by that. And then he loses him. Not once, but twice. Not once, but twice. All this magic in this show. You have to pay attention. When are we in reality? I love it that the way Jake has set it up is that Pip stops time. Pip simply works outside time. After he dies and is brought back, is it Pip?
Right.
Yeah.
What is this creature?
And the most enigmatic line of the show for me is when Ahab says to Pip, "Go below."
And you'll find Pip.
And you'll find Pip, yeah.
Just,
But they're treating him as if he had lost his mind. And it's more profound than that. He's now operating outside time.
Yeah.
And just this little kid. It's all remarkable. I get goosebumps.
He sees everything,
And you think about this child in the environment which Justin was talking about on this ship for so long, and what that must be like in the developmental years like that. It's just an amazing.
What we don't understand about kids is that they didn't exist until now.
No. Yeah.
We didn't have helpless people at 30
right.
until now. This is a whole new phenomenon. My generation, we hippies, I think we did a lousy job of raising adults.
Okay.
We let them stay kids because we wanted to stay kids forever. The whole hippie thing that was all about just not growing up. I'm not going to grow up, right? Don't trust anybody over 30.
Sure.
This whole thing of I'm not going to deal with money, and I'm going to have a job, and I'm going to be responsible, and I'm not going to do any of that stuff. I'm just going to be me and be free, right?
Yeah.
we were brought up to think that the world revolved around our desires. Because somebody, Spock or somebody, told people that they ought to do that with their children. So we didn't grow up with the idea that we had to work, that we had to help, that we had to be fruitful and produce. And
I think there was, in that time in American history, though, there was certainly a reaction to what, as Americans, we had been through with the war. So after the war,
also the Depression,
and the Depression followed by the war, you can only imagine what, someone my age or younger people, let's say, can only imagine what the rigidity of that, of what it seemed like it would take to raise a successful civilization after going through that gamut. It's, I think the baby boomers being raised by returning veterans, war vets, who had a structure to things. And there was, to me, it seems natural that you have this large generation coming through with disposable income, and in a way they're reacting to the rigidity of their upbringing, which was probably rooted in the war experience, the Depression experience. So I don't blame you, Larry. You are as much a result of the conditions as the millennials are, a result of...
And every generation that comes along. I sidestepped the whole thing. I just went into the church. I was going to be a monk. I just stepped out of the whole thing. Somehow I got talked out of being a monk. That was
probably good for us.
But now we're going to take a little pause because I'm going to run down the hall and be right back.
Oh, sure.
Okay, sure.
So Chris, we'll be back in a bit. I don't know how to make it stop. So
it's okay.
Right.
We'll just...
Is there a pause button?
I'll just let it go.
No, we'll just let it go.
Never come back on.
This is such a funny rehearsal process. I feel like I have to have 8 different things with me at all times, and I'm always fearful. I'm like, did I remember the knee pads? Did I remember this? That? I was going to... Have you seen these knee pads? Since you have knee things, I travel with these.
These are fantastic.
Those are neoprene.
Yeah. Where do you get these?
I can send you...
Models or something?
I'll send it... You have to get them, I think, on Amazon now.
My knees, are pretty well healed.
Okay, good.
I suffered an injury that first day. We were jumping around on the... I was trying to explain that to, to the guys. It's just it's something that I knew would clear up as long as I took care of it.
Yeah, I understand.
But you are right. I am susceptible to that. That's why I had the injury. Much better now, though, probably 95%.
I would say about 10 years ago, I worked with Marilyn Horne. I met her at Music Academy and worked with her since then. And she told me, she was just like, wear knee pads.
Take care of your knees.
Every single time. She goes, do you know how many of us? And she said, don't take steroids. Because they would destroy your joints. And because she was like, look how many of us in our... she said, those of us who went to Germany had to, we would get sick and the house would put you on steroids and throw you on stage. And those of us that did that we're all having joint replacements in our early 70s.
That way? I know it can affect your bones. So,
absolutely. So it's we're talking about protecting knees and joints on stage and things like that.
Okay, Chris, I'm back. So we can resume. And okay, let's talk about one of the great difficulties of Ahab.
Well, what do you mean? I have no idea what you could possibly talk. The peg leg, or Peggy Sue, is what we're referring to. Peggy Sue. I believe that my predecessor in the production named it, and when I was coming up with it, and then they said you should name it, and I said, well, it seems like Peggy Sue would be, and they said, oh, that's what he called her as well. And I said, really? Well, I said it served him quite well, so I'm just, and then I found out that the peg leg is actually a survivor from the first production, so it was actually even used in the first production. So I said, Peggy Sue it is. And then wonderful Lori in the props department made me the most beautiful cane out of oak, so that's Oakley. Oakley and Peggy Sue get me around quite well, but we're I was also quite fortunate last Sunday to go up to San Francisco and work with Garrett Hurley at LIM Innovations in securing the leg properly to me,
to fit your person,
to me. And so we spent Alyssa in the costume department here. The costume director, I guess, is her title?
That's okay. Alyssa.
Good. We went up. We had a lovely day, and Garrett was super helpful getting me fitted, similar to what Roger was in Utah with the prosthetics department at the University of Utah. So to have that really has improved everything for me, which is really wonderful. The thing is, I have to say, everyone's like, "Oh, does your knee hurt? Does your..." And actually, it doesn't, because
that's grand.
Well, the whole thing is that I worked with Kristine before. We did Yanufa together, a fabulous production.
That's another. I don't like either of you anymore.
Oh yeah,
you're just doing all my favorite things.
Oh, I love that. Yanufa that's 1 and 2. I go back and forth. Yanufa and Peter Grimes are my 2 favorite operas.
Oh boy, I hear you there.
So I go back and forth between, but I will say Moby-Dick is really climbing up there, and it is going. But anyway, back to that. I could go on about that for hours, and we don't want to hear that. But with the leg, Kristine is such a generous person. She sent me diagrams, she sent me pictures and costumes, and so I knew what it was like. And then Jake also said, "Richard, do me a favor." And I said, "Sure." He goes, "Learn it on one leg." And so I bought a knee crutch, one of those knee crutches, and I when I'm in Chattanooga visiting my family, I'm very lucky to be able to use the choir room at St. Paul's Episcopal Church downtown, and so they had a real good time looking at me walking in at 9:00 on Monday morning with a knee crutch in my hand, and going, why is he carrying that with him? So it was actually quite funny. But
it's so true, though, when you're learning, until you've been impaired in some way, and I was with a knee injury a few years ago. It's hard to sing on one leg.
Yeah,
it's really hard.
Well, it's different. I won't say it's hard. It's, when you don't futz around too much and start moving a whole lot when it's like that. But once we got everything fitted, I felt like it was we're in a good place with it.
I love it in the novel that what Ahab does is he has a little hole that he has had he has a whole depression in the deck that he can put his peg in, and then it keeps him stable.
Right, exactly.
So
exactly.
It does.
Now we don't have that on the set. Let me just say.
No, but the whole idea that in life, such a thing as a peg leg, you needed help.
Yeah,
and it's very clear in preparing this and working with this that is a case. I'm so glad we were finally able to get that solved, because there was some concern building up that, is this thing ever going to fit properly?
Right. Well, and it quite honestly, it was because it had been fit to, how many other people sang on it? 3, 4? I believe. I think 4. I think I'm the 4th or 5th Ahab. I'm not quite sure, but we are all different sizes, different ages, different everything, and mobility. Certainly in this production, Ahab is much more mobile than in the original one, and does so much more physical activity.
Well, she has everybody.
Yes,
all over the place.
It's a physical production. That's for sure.
Physical production, and I think it gives one a very, very clear impression of what it was like to work on there for everyone. It's the story of everyone, not just Ahab or not just Starbuck or not just it's the life, everyday life. So, and I'm enjoying it. It is certainly a challenge, and there are times where I have to say, okay, no, you're going down the stairs now. Think about this. Find your rhythm. It's another part of musicianship. Honestly, you have to find the physical rhythm to accomplish what you need to. So.
And as Starbuck, you're involved with the whole of the crew. As Ahab, you're not so much.
Yeah.
But Starbuck, you're kind of in charge of them all. You're the first mate, right?
That's right. And as such, I feel a great responsibility for the crew. A responsibility that I think should lie with Ahab, but as Starbuck, I realize.
Well, he has abandoned that responsibility.
So it becomes beholden on Starbuck, and it's a difficult position because Starbuck really can't make the final decision on anything.
No, he doesn't make any calls.
Yeah. So it's a great responsibility without authority, and that's a difficult line to walk for anyone. But as an actor, trying to identify with that, and yes, and being responsible and in charge of the crew, basically, is. I try to stay connected to them. That's something that actually, as the process continues, that's something I'm looking at now that I've got my path. We've had our room run and we have our paths set and we have our relationships in a good position for this timing. Now more than ever, I think it's time to focus on the crew. Emotionally, I'm connected, but also practically, I have to be connected because there is work going on all the time. In the first scene, the boys are getting excited. They're setting sail and they drift from their work a little bit, and Starbuck has to call them back to work.
Get to work.
The mizzen topsail. We're sitting here gossiping, and we're sailors. We should be working. So, that's a great responsibility for Starbuck.
And so, therefore, you're able to stay in the swim of things with all the people around you, whereas Ahab is a little more closed off.
He's very agenda driven.
Monomania.
Yes.
I think they call that.
What is it? 13 times in the book that Melville refers to him as that. It's really interesting to me, especially. Ahab comes on with that singular purpose. And from the very beginning, he's that way. We don't see what caused it, really. We don't get to see that. And we don't see him really relent or really back down from it until quite late in the opera. And then the wonderful scene that we have, the symphony duet that we have there is one of the wonderful moments where you see the humanity somewhat of Ahab, and I think it's quite interesting to hear him speak in a way
speak of his family and his son,
to speak of things that are everyday. And normal life, not about him taking on this God and this creature,
taking on the universe.
Yes.
And I think it's interesting that Starbuck, in his way, is trying to work on Ahab, and there are different angles that he can take. One is you have responsibility for your crew. Well, Ahab turns that around and says, "Yes, I have responsibility to use the crew to my ends."
Exactly.
Starbuck appeals in the name of Jesus, in the name of God. You have a responsibility to our Maker to do what is right. None of it works, but in the second act, in that late hour.
In a rather extended duet, it's close to 10 minutes long.
Yes, it is.
No, don't tell me that. I just learned it. I think
It's about 10 minutes long. It's a little
great.
less, but not much.
But it, the appeal to humanity, which I think is Melville's thrust in the book. Obviously, the relationship between Queequeg and Greenhorn, the appeal of Starbuck to Ahab of family.
Well, Starbuck does say, "Oh, noble Ahab."
Yes.
So there is a history of Starbuck before this problem. They have to have had a history before this.
Yeah.
Because Starbuck has respect in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then he sees, oh, wait, whoa, what?
Yeah. Well, the thing about Ahab that he's a master manipulator. He of this world. He gets them to agree that this is their best their best option this is what we're doing all of this for, is to find this one whale. And it riles them up. I feel like the manipulation factor in this sort of I guess salesmanship of his vision, it reminds me a bit of Loga in Rheingold. I mean, this sort of he has this ability. It's a little different, but it's like a sneakiness of getting that agenda, always pushing it forward. And when something happens that causes him to have to step back, he lashes out then. So it's a fascinating character in that way.
And every character is complicated.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
There's just nobody that's just straightforward. Here I am.
Well, that's why it's so.
Scarpia.
Yeah.
Here I am. I'm the bad guy.
Yeah.
It's not. It's nothing's cut and dry.
Yeah. Yeah. But isn't it fun when they do people portray characters as more complicated than black and white? I will never forget being a student at Music Academy of the West. Gosh, when was this? 2001. And going down to see LA Opera's production of Tosca, and it was Catherine Malfitano and Tom Fox. And Act 2 was the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life, because the chemistry, you thought at any moment she was going to make a different choice and go with Scarpia. And it was like the hottest opera I have ever. I was just like, holy crap! I mean, and I got to go backstage afterwards and speak to Miss Malfitano, and many years later, I won an Opera Index award, and she was the honoree at the gala, and I went and sat next to her, and I said, I know you don't, but I have to tell you, the Tosca in LA, and I never forgot it. And then we worked on Yennefer in Washington D.C. a few years later then too. So to have that sort of, we really work in a fabulous business to get to,
we work in an amazing
it's
business.
Really, it's quite something to be in school and watch someone move you like that, and then to start a career, and then all of a sudden you're in the same rehearsal room as they are, and you're watching their process and how they get to something.
Irene Dallas, our founding director, she went to grad school in New York, and of course she went to the opera continually, and her anyway, she hung with some really cool musicians also. And then she goes off she wins a Fulbright and goes to Milan. She stays 2 years instead of 1. And Bing hears her in her second year. Irene was actually the accompanist in the auditions. But then she got up and sang 2 arias for Mr. Rudolph Bing, right? And she
like you do.
Yeah,
like you do.
Of course, yeah. Always ready for that one.
And it turns out that she was the only singer that he was interested in. In the whole audition, she was the one. And Bing tells her voice teacher, well, there's this one Yvonne Dallas, and evidently the voice teacher spat out his soup. He said, you can't have her. He says, what do you mean I can't? Excuse me, my name is Rudolph Bing. He says, but she has never been on a stage in her life.
Yeah, but he heard what that voice sounded like and knew.
And he says, well, I'll give her 4 years.
Oh, wow.
And so she was 2 years in Oldenburg, and then she went to Berlin. And the thing that changed her life during that first year is she went on as Kostelniczka in Yennefer.
Oh, God. Oh, I'd love to hear that.
And the next day she got her telegram from the Met engaging her as that role, as Eboli. I'm pointing to a portrait of Irene as Eboli. That photograph was taken in Oldenburg.
Oh, my goodness.
And then made into a painting by somebody who copied the photograph.
It's fantastic. Wow.
And we made that. That's a copy of the original, and we hung it on our Barber of Seville set.
Oh, that's great.
So she was keeping an eye on all the shenanigans.
I love it.
So boom, there she was at the Met, and who was she with? All the people she'd been worshiping when she was just a student. I mean, Jussi Björling was her tenor, and Dili Regal was the Aida. Pardon me.
Yeah.
Who's the queen of...
Elisabetta.
Okay, Elizabeth. And I think Warren was the baritone.
The B cast. I see. Oh, yeah. I see. Second cast. Oh, God.
And there was Irene walking out in the middle of all these people.
Goodness gracious.
And she said, she said, I didn't have a choice but to be good.
I was going to say,
Right.
she must have just had the nerves
You
of...
have to stand up when you're around giants.
Yes.
You have to stand up.
Yeah.
And the cool thing for me working in it is not that I've ever been on stage, is that all these people came to see Irene. So I was driving them around and taking them there and taking care of them. So I was having dinner with Tatiana Troyanos and Leonie Rieseneck and Cheryl Milnes and all these people that Irene worked with.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, and Leontine Price, who almost picked me up off the ground, she gave me a hug and a kiss. Because I had sent flowers to her personal assistant in New York. And the guy I married, he lived in New York, and he had a buddy who owned a flower shop who adored Leontine Price.
Yes.
So I needed to send flowers to Elizabeth because she had helped me. And evidently, the flower arrangement was so gigantic. I paid $50 for this, and the flower arrangement was so gigantic that they had to rent a van to deliver it, and 2 guys had to carry it into the house.
Oh my goodness!
It was flowers.
Yeah.
So what fun! But those people are not pretentious. They're not demanding. They know their worth, and they are utterly prepared. And we were talking just this morning about Jake Heggie, our PR guy, Chris. We were talking about Jake, and he was remarking on how kind Jake Heggie was to him. And he says, I'm just nobody. I'm just a guy in the back room. And I says, well, you have more in common than you think, first of all. But second, that's what a professional person is.
Exactly.
Right.
That's the very definition. Well, there it is.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I think, to bring that statement a little back to who Ahab is the fact that, in many times you know more about a person by the way they treat other people around them that can't do anything for them than you do about who they call God, or who they profess is their main believer.
That's
and
exactly right. Yeah.
That is what I think Ahab is saying. He's treating everyone the same as going towards this one goal. You're with me towards my goal, or you're not. I don't care.
He says it, yeah.
I don't care what else you believe. It doesn't matter. But are you on? Are you on? And if you're not, then Starbuck, let's get you on board. Yeah,
and then let's get you on board.
Yeah. How do I do it?
On that show.
Am I going to give you a doubloon? Because you need money. What is it? I mean, he's very critical of those who are doing it for money. So and comes back to it
himself.
Exactly. I mean, just one more thumb your nose at them that says, "See, look, you're so focused on money that I'm still the one that found him."
There's an interesting passage in the book. I was actually just looking at it. Where Ahab sees the people around him as tools, and he realizes that that Starbuck has a spirituality that's untouchable. So, and he compares it to the intellect not being affected by the corporeal. If I have corporeal control over someone, it doesn't allow me to have control of their intellect. Well, Ahab does have control of the intellect of the ship, as well as the corporeal. And he might even attempt to have the intellectual control over Starbuck, but he can't get his hands on that spirituality.
Because there is faith.
Whatever that is in the core. Right. And that's what I really have worked in this production, in this role, in my interpretation of what Justin Ryan can bring to Starbuck is finding that core and keeping that dignity intact, because let's face it, this character gets beat up, almost from the first scene. And so that's, to me, is interesting.
It's super interesting. I agree with you, Justin. And I think the other thing that I question a lot about Ahab's past is I find myself asking, what was I like at 30? What was I like? Because, of course, Ahab is 58.
Starbuck is 30.
Starbuck is 30, and I feel like there was something that he sees in Starbuck that is some sort of he relates to at that age, and in some way, because you already have a family, and Ahab waited past 50 to have a family, and it has one that he never sees. It's a really interesting thing, and it's not quite explored so much in the opera, but I think it's
there's a hint of it in the duet.
Yeah, in the duet, but it's not. And of course the duet the symphony happens earlier in the book than it does in the opera. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of. It's an interesting thing to think about. I get little flashes of it when we're performing it and trying to think, wow, what am I seeing in this guy? Am I seeing myself? Am I seeing who I was, who I wanted to be? What was it? Because
it was profound, whatever it was.
It is. It nags at you a little bit, just as I think it does. Ahab. It nags at him. Starbuck gets under his skin. From the beginning, he gets under his skin.
Yes, there is enmity from the start.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and in that extended duet, Jake has set it up so that you really are in duet. You're moving together in parallel motion and singing the same words at the same time about different things.
Exactly.
But it's a very complex moment, and yet it's one of those moments where some people might be able to just sit back and just listen because it's so pretty. So they can just sit back and listen.
Yeah, it's brilliantly written that way. Yeah. It's much more difficult to execute, but when you do it, you listen back to it and you're like, that's quite beautiful.
Yeah, it takes a great deal of concentration.
It really does. You have to concentrate like the Dickens for it.
Harmonically complex.
Oh man, Jake Heggie, harmonically complex and rhythmically complex. Oh, come on. It's not Ligeti. Thank God it's not Ligeti. But there are moments of transcendent beauty in this thing.
Absolutely.
Both out of the orchestra, out of the chorus, and out of individual artists. Greenhorn's big aria. When he sees Queequeg holding Pip. And he says, wow.
Yeah.
Well, now I get it. As he says himself. I was blind, but now I see.
Yes.
And what he sees is the holiness of Queequeg. And the holiness of the relationship of the guy who risks his life, dives into the sea, gets this kid and swims out with the kid on his back. A big, strong guy saving this child.
Yes.
Whereas the Christians around on the ship were happy to walk away.
Right.
But not Queequeg. So... No, this opera is a big deal. Gentlemen, we've talked a long time, and we could just keep on talking.
Absolutely, I think we've proven that.
If we just had some beer.
No argument from here.
Yes.
Well, thank you for taking your time out. I know that you're working on something that's monumental.
Yes.
And that each of you is taking it quite seriously.
Absolutely.
And digging into this thing with genuine respect.
Well, absolutely, and we're so thankful for Opera San Jose for having the vision to invest in these works that are rather recent and to actually put them on for the public. I think they're so important.
I want you to do me a favor.
Yes.
I want you to look up Des Moines Metro Opera.
That's where I did Yennefer with Kristine.
And look at the list of their repertoire.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah. Yeah.
I only knew about them because of Kristine.
Yes.
I've always known about Des Moines Metro. Who doesn't know about Des Moines?
Exactly.
But I had no idea what it was, a 500-seat hall in which they do Electra.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a magnificent company.
I was just shamed when I looked at the list of work, because we work for a public that really wants those tried and true 10 operas.
Yes. Of course.
It's a repertory of 10 operas. And what I realized in taking over the company 4 or 5 years ago, my year of planning, and I looked at, because I used to be the marketing director here. I was the first hire at Opera San Jose 36 years ago. The year before Opera San Jose was formed, I was hired.
Right.
And worked for a year in creating the company and then opened the company officially. And so it was, as the marketing director, I could tell when we were selling single tickets and when we weren't. But it didn't used to be so terribly, terribly, terribly important to sell all the tickets because the world wasn't as expensive. But over time, it has become more, since we moved into the California and expenses skyrocketed. It's been terribly important. Those single tickets are terribly important to our continued existence.
Sure.
But I'm looking at it and I'm saying, but Manon doesn't fill the hall. And Werther doesn't fill the hall. Yevgeny Onegin doesn't fill the hall. I mean, there are a lot of works out there that are great masterworks. I mean, undisputed, great masterpieces, but my public doesn't care. That they like Carmen and Bohème and Butterfly, and there's 10. Actually, there's only 9. And the rest of the world, there's 10 because the rest of the world likes Così fan tutte. But people here don't like it. And I decided, well, if I'm going to do something that's not going to sell any single tickets, I want to do something that's contemporary. That at least I can help that composer. I can't help Massenet. I can't help Tchaikovsky. That party's over. But I can help Kevin Putz, not in a substantial way, but in another notch in his belt and $60,000, right? Because you have to pay royalties.
There's that part. Right.
And so I've done a few. Every year I try to do one new thing. The next 2 years, I'm not scheduling one new thing. The next 2 years, we're only doing works that we already own.
Right.
Because we simply can't afford to build.
Of course. Yeah.
But the new work is really the lifeblood of the art.
Of course it is.
And if you we went through this phase, I think, where we paid known entities $1 million to commission one work that was supposed to be great, and it might have been the first opera of that composer. Whereas when we look at all of the composers that are in those 9 or 10, those aren't the only operas that those guys wrote. Verdi wrote 26.
Well, around,
So it's on versions, and not all of them are gems. And so it's important for a Putz or a Heggie to have the opportunity to continue to work and build craft.
Well, because usually it takes them 2 or 3 before they hit their stride. It certainly took Puccini 3 and it took Verdi 3. But after that, they tend to do pretty well most of the time. But yes, I mean, the only clinker that Puccini wrote after the first 2 is Rondine. And I think it's a great opera. We've done it twice. And I don't think it's a good opera. I think it's a great opera. I think it's terribly mismanaged by stage directors.
Yes.
You simply have to do what Mr. Puccini said to do in the score. It can't be that you leave the soprano on the stage and the tenor walks off. That's completely wrecks the whole story.
It really does. You're right.
And then you walk off going, what was that about again? 'Cause nobody looks sincere. You got to... Well, one of the hallmarks of Opera San Jose, we tell the story that's in that libretto. I don't care what time period you put it in.
Tell
that story.
The story's there.
And if you can't tell that story in the time that you're enamored of, then you can't use that time.
Thank you.
You've got to tell that story.
I agree completely.
Absolutely.
I move Lucia. I move it to the Battle of Bosworth Field when Henry VII killed Richard III. And there was a big change in the world, right? I mean, suddenly people were dying because they were fighting for the wrong team. When the Tudors took over, they were not sweet about it. And people really did, their lives were at stake. Whereas the made-up king and queen in Lucia, who are names of people who ruled in England, but nothing to do with the description in there. It's just made up. So, well, let's hang our hat there, and we don't have to wear cavalier costumes, which I hate. So they're very expensive and very ugly. The women look great, but the men look. Let's take us back to the Middle Ages and have tights and tunics. And, so I'm happy to violate a period. But right now we have to violate this period. And
I have to go get hair.
You have to go get hair. So anyway, this interview is concluded.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
for having us.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
That's great. Thanks.